Ask Me Anything. Everyone, I'm Matt Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I'm not really in Atlanta. Anyways, it's one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Ding.
Ding.
Oh.
I'm here.
Oh, she's here.
In real life, sees.
We're going to do an Ask Me Anything or Ask Us Anything.
Yeah.
So here goes. All right, so we didn't plan ahead for this, so we just kind of had a few friends plant some questions for us.
They're real questions.
They're real questions. So we had people send in voice recordings of their questions. Mm-hmm. Some people requested that we disguise their voice, and so we won't reveal who they are. But I will play the first question into my microphone, and we'll go from there.
What have you learned from taping thousands of other actors? What are things, good or bad, that you've learned that have then helped you in your auditions? Maybe some things that you have witnessed and then you've learned, to stop doing them yourself or to, start incorporating them. I guess I'm just curious. So I think we can always learn, from life and from others. And so I'm just curious what you have learned from the thousands and thousands of auditions that you have taped from others.
Yeah. That's a great question. What have we learned, Brooke?
I know I've learned that you don't have to be so serious.
That's a good one.
It's a playroom, in my opinion. And when I watch people play, I have a good time with them as the reader, and we get into it, and it just seems more real and more like life. But, and of course, when people come in, I'm so sorry, Matt, but where am I looking?
You can look right there.
Thanks. That's where I was looking. But.
Great.
So I just feel like there's a lot of people that I have seen that come in that are just super stressed out when they walk in the room. And I'm like, you don't have to be that way. Because look, there were 5 other people in front of you that weren't stressed out. And
yeah, finding that sense of play, I think, is so tough. And seeing that in so many other actors, to answer the question, it makes you realize like, oh, it's really sad when other people aren't having fun. Oh, I haven't been having fun in my auditions. So there's a lot of technical things like seeing actors who don't have good cold reading skills, actors who don't prepare enough. They don't have good script analysis. So there are things like that. And we've become amazingly good cold readers after thousands upon thousands of scripts that we've cold read over the years. But I think that's a great sort of overall one, which is that we have learned to try to find the joy in playing in those auditions and not taking them so seriously. I mean, heck, I'd shaved my beard to this ridiculous stash for an audition, and I'm keeping it for the time being. Yeah. And it's because I was willing to play, not because I felt like I had to do it to book the role. I probably won't book the role, and it might be because of the stash, but I don't care because I had fun. So.
The other thing, I just want to make a little bit of a switch on it. The thing that I don't think people know that they can do, that if they were in our shoes, they would realize you can have fun we said fun a couple times, but to sit in your audition, to do a different position, to wear a colored shirt that might not be a solid. Whoa. It's just interesting that there are a lot of people that don't know what they can do as opposed to what we've learned.
Yeah, like taking ownership, knowing that you have more ownership than you probably realize. Mm-hmm. People are trying to find out what casting wants instead of taking ownership over the role. Recently heard my friend Eric Goins say this in an interview, which we firmly believe, which is, that self-tape is the only time you get full control over the audition. As soon as you get a callback or you get on set, you're collaborating, which is a good thing, but take ownership over it now and have fun with the idea that this is the only time you get to do exactly what you want for the role.
Bravo.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah. Next question.
Okay, what is it?
This one is voice disguised.
What if an opportunity comes your way that you were not expecting? Let's say, for example, a role that you weren't expecting to come your way, or the opportunity for a new agent that you weren't looking for, and you already had a role in place or an agent in place that
we listen to these questions ahead of time, so I will kind of summarize what I think is being asked, which is I think there's 2 maybe variations to it. One is that you get a booking memo for one job, and before you've shot it, before you actually go on set for the first day, you get another job booked that's better, that conflicts with the first job, or like they're saying, you have an agent already, and maybe somewhere in that relationship, you forgot that you applied to another agency and now they want to sign you, but you've already signed with the first agent, but the second agent is better, bigger, seems like a better opportunity. So Brooke, from an ethical standpoint, from a career longevity standpoint, do you have any insight into that sort of situation where you feel like you have this current opportunity in hand, and yet something that is perceived to be a better opportunity by either your standards or the industry standards comes your way? Do you stay with your first one? Do you level up?
I think it really is a case by case basis. However, when I first moved to Atlanta, I signed with a really great agency, and 2 days later, another really great agency called me and said, "We'd love to assign you." And I was like, "Sorry, I've already signed with this other agent." And it was early on, and I loved that agency. And then when it was time for me to leave that agency, this other one that had called me 2 days later was still interested. So, and this was a while. It wasn't like 5 days after. I was with them for quite some time. So you got to stick with that, but maybe have the discussion early on, saying, "Well, guess what? Ew, I'm wanted by many, and I really want to make sure that this is the right relationship. So can we be on a trial basis for now?" And then I also had another booking one, if that's
Do
okay.
it, yeah, please.
Where I did book something this was a non-union job. And I had booked it, and I'd gone to a rehearsal, and I booked a very large television show that conflicted with those dates. And what I did was got the counsel of my agency. My agent took care of it all. Unfortunately, the non-union job had to go by the wayside because I had 3 episodes on this other show. So
yeah, it's tough. You're balancing FOMO, and that's the very real thing you got to be careful of, that you're not just thinking that you're missing out on a better opportunity. It should actually be better on paper, but also after you take the counsel from your agent to make an informed decision. There is, I think, and I don't want to speak for SAG-AFTRA, but I do know that if it's 2 union jobs and one of them pays better and is a bigger role, the union fully supports you in turning down the initial one, as long as you haven't already started filming, that you can go for that better job if they're both union. Now, you could burn a bridge. That is always a possibility. So
I might have burned a bridge on that one.
Yeah. And so that's the other thing you have to weigh in that equation is, do I think I'm going to burn a bridge? And if so, is it a bridge that is irreparable and will harm me in the long run? And should I just stay with what my first yes was and go with that? It's certainly a case by case basis. But we fully recognize that as a dilemma that comes up for actors, and Brooks had to face that a couple times.
And I also think we have to be very careful about the possibility of a project taking over, because we can't an avail check is not an offer. You move on with your life just like you would with anything else. And just because you booked a job but you have an avail check for something else that kind of shoots around that time, it's not a booking yet. So don't feel, I've had that happen too early on in my career, of like, but they want me as well, so maybe I need to figure this out. And then my full self is not available because my mind is trailing off to the what ifs.
Yeah. Be careful about the getting a case of the what ifs.
Yes.
Next question comes from someone who seems rather angry, or maybe they're just pretending to be angry.
Maybe,
we're not sure.
Yeah, I got a question. Why would I pay good money and then have to drive all the way to your studio to record a self-tape when I could just make my own studio at home? All you need is a curtain and a ring light. Kind of sounds like a scam if you ask me.
Ooh, let's try that.
Words.
All right.
Heavy words.
No scams here.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, this is actually a really good question that was posed slightly in jest by that caller, but comes from a very real place of honesty that I think a lot of actors wonder, what is the point? It feels like it's a scam to come to a taping service. And there are a few things. I'll just loft up a couple reasons why we have been in existence since 2010 and don't feel like we're shutting our doors anytime soon. In other words, there is a need for taping services. And I think it's a couple things. First of all, when you do the actual math, if you can find a taping service that's close to home, then you're saving money from those times where everything was in person and you had to drive across town, especially if you're an LA actor and you had to drive all over that ginormous metro area for auditions, sometimes 2 or 3 in one day, stressed out, fighting traffic. So there is a cost associated with that on the wear and tear of your car, the gas, your time has value. So a self-taping service like Get Taped is not necessarily a new cost in the sense that you weren't paying money before. You were paying money when you were going in person. Now, his argument about doing it at home, great. We are in full support that if you can figure this out at home, do it at home.
Yeah.
Yes, save money. That's why we fought to keep our prices so low for so long, is because we don't want this to be a burden on actors. But the thing that we've really come to embrace as one of the biggest justifications for coming to a taping service is what our friend Joe Town would say is noise.
Mm.
And we don't mean like the crickets that we can hear
Yeah.
outside while we get bid up at this B&B. But we're talking about the head noise, the things that are getting in the way of you doing your art. So if setting up even a simple ring light with a bed sheet on your wall, if that creates head noise, if that stresses you out, the fact that you have to set that up every time you're auditioning and break it down because you don't want to have a permanent backdrop on your wall, if it is a headache, if it causes head noise for you to find a reader, to ask your spouse, who's a horrible actor, by the way,
He's
to
not.
ask, to ask them once again because they're not an actor, let's say. That happens a lot where you're in a relationship with a non-actor and they're just a terrible
Roommates
reader.
with a non-actor.
Yeah, your roommates with an actor, but then it's like weird bartering of like, hey, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. But then they're wondering why you're getting auditions and they're not. And so just that, right? The fact that a relationship can be strained, that becomes head noise. That's preventing you from doing your best work. And there's a cost associated with that. For every several auditions that you are just so stressed out and so distracted that you really don't put down anything that resembles good work, well, what is the cost associated with losing those opportunities? And if you really were to assign dollar values to that, you would realize very quickly that if head noise is causing you a lot of problems, then going to a taping service and spending $10 or $20 to tape that audition suddenly becomes the cheaper option, because you walk in and it's like going to a spa compared to all of that stress that you had doing it at home. So that would be my big pitch for why it's worth it. Not always, but it's worth it to use a taping service.
Yeah, I think if you're tech savvy and you are capable of just getting rid of all that head noise, go for it.
Yeah.
And also, we would love for in-persons to come back.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Which again, the new SAG-AFTRA contract makes it such that every cast director has to offer Zoom, virtual or in-person opportunities for every audition. Some actors, I think, missed that and don't even know that that's a thing. So every single union television and film, not necessarily commercial, but every union television and film audition has to have a provision for some sort of live audition that allows you to avoid going to a taping service, especially if they're asking for in-persons. But again, then some people don't know how to use Zoom, and now you're actually compromising your opportunity because you have horrible lighting at home and you don't even know how to, how far to sit from your computer, and you keep forgetting to unmute yourself, and now you're causing frustration. So, there's going to be pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
And
I think it's just about where you feel that you're a little bit uncomfortable, because it needs to have those stakes, but not stakes that would cripple you in your performance. But sometimes that's really why people don't go to a taping service, is because it feels like it's too crippling. They're going to watch me perform. I have to act in front of another human being.
Who are these people? I don't know who they are. And it would say, like, if you've never been to a taping service, find one that is highly recommended in your area and try it once.
Yeah.
Do their cheapest option and just see what it is that you might or might not be missing out on. And if you realize, like, oh no, that totally isn't worth it, well then great, you've just reinforced that your home setup is perfect.
Yep.
But if you realize, like, oh, and this happens quite a bit, actors go, oh yeah, my home setup is crappy, I need to start coming here. And we don't want people to feel that shame, but if it does illuminate something in you of like, oh, this is possible, I didn't realize self-tape auditions could look and sound like this, and that I could feel so comfortable and have a good reader. So again, this is our business, so of course we're going to be invested in defending the stance of taping services.
But we are also in full support of, if you have your own home studio and it works for you, do it.
I have a question about tracking auditions A, do you track your auditions? If so, how?
Mhm.
And if you don't, why don't you?
That's a really good question from a voice that we recognize. I used to have a really meticulous spreadsheet. I know you also
do.
used to, or still do.
I still do, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that I kind of fell out of that because my priorities as it related to the data, like the data that I was tracking, changed. So initially, I think it's extremely important because if you're with a new agent and you're feeling frustrated a year into the relationship or 6 months, you need to be able to, without asking for a submission report, you need to go back and be able to say, this is how many auditions I've had. This is how many avail checks or callbacks or pins or first refusals I've had with these casting offices, so that you can start to notice the trends. So that when you go to your agent, you go, hey, so-and-so casting office seems to love me because 80% of my auditions come from them. And you can have a more elevated, more articulate conversation with your agent if you are feeling like there's something that's wrong, something that's missing. Or if you feel like you're looking for something for yourself to work on, looking at that data can be so helpful.
But you got to look at it as data.
Yeah. And be careful. Yeah. Don't get emotional about it. And certainly don't use it as like the ammunition to come after your agent and to really tell them how it is. That's just not a great tactic. But I would say that I focus on different things, like more like the financial stuff of like tracking residuals, every payment that I get. That's where I now really pay attention to the data at a minuscule sort of fine level. I don't track the auditions the way I used to, partly just because of where the relationships have come to for me with certain casting offices. I'm not worried about the numbers with so-and-so casting office versus this one over here. What are you?
Which we all can't be so blessed, Matt.
Sure.
My tracking comes with my bookings. I will track the director, the AD, the PAs, the makeup artist, the hair, the key hair.
I used to want to do that, and I just never followed.
I do, and if you do it in an Excel spreadsheet, if you start to type in someone's name and it pops up, you're like, I've worked with them before, so now I know that I can have that recognizable relationship and not come in with guns a-blazing. Yeah. But if they say, you look familiar, have we worked together before? You can say, you know what, I think it might have been fill in blank. Yeah. And they're like, yes. And then they're really excited that you've remembered them. And maybe you didn't remember them, facially, but you know that they've worked with you before.
Yeah. But I do think early in your career, just to kind of go back and summarize, early in your career, early with an agency, I would highly recommend it. I think there's at least one app I feel like that's out there. It's either an app for the phone or it might be just a web-based app for tracking auditions. Otherwise, you can just use Excel or numbers if you're a Mac person, and so you can create the columns however you want. You just got to follow through. If it's not something that excites you, it's going to feel like eating your vegetables when you're a kid, and you may end up sort of resenting the task. But if you really are approaching this as a professional and you really want to find ways that you can tangibly move forward in this career, that can be a helpful thing, because when you do have conversations with your representation, you want those to be intelligent conversations and not emotional conversations where it's just like, oh, but I feel like you should be a star by now. Why not? And they're going to look at you like, oh my gosh, you need to calm down first of all. And I can't have a conversation with you if you're coming at me just emotional. But if you can come with that spreadsheet saying, okay, so I've had 75 auditions in the last X number of months or years, and this is my booking percentage, and then they're going to be really impressed with how you come at them, and they'll then want to have that discussion with you. So I think when it's early with an agent or just early in your career, definitely track all of it. Here's another fun one that might or might not be serious.
Hello?
Oh.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Oh.
How do I book more and become a movie star?
Yeah.
Well, we don't really deal with overseas artists.
We don't know the Swedish market very well.
Swedish?
I think that's Swedish.
I think it's German.
It could be, yes. That was not my voice.
I don't know.
But in all seriousness, what do we want to say about becoming a star, Brooke?
Well, I think it does depend on your desire of your trajectory of this career. For instance, at this point, I am a journeywoman, if you want. And I am completely satisfied with the fact that I just get to work. I get to work, and that to me fills my cup. If being a star is what fills your cup, I think that there is a whole other trajectory that you need to take, which to me involves going outside of what a steady career path would. There needs to be a team that is just fighting for you on every level. There needs to be a high profile online presence, not necessarily social media, but you need to know what's going down. You need to be on top of things and be networking and getting your face out there and getting your work out there. And but that's not always going to happen for, even if people are doing that. A lot of times it is really just luck.
Yeah. And I would say, in all seriousness, our Sam Christensen process, not to make this an advertisement, but you're going to need to know the type of stuff that you would learn in 4 days. With that process, it is just a must. If you think stardom is in your future, you just know in your bones that you're going to be a star, you're going to be walking that carpet and holding up that Oscar at some point soon in your career. And let's say, God forbid, you've given yourself a timeline for that. Then you have to know how people see you. You have to know what that audience is waiting to see, even though you haven't broken through yet. And that's what the Sam Christensen process does in 4 days. That if you don't take the process, it's fine, but it could take you years or even decades to finally look back and go, oh, I was totally misinformed at the beginning of my career. I did not know who I was or what roles I should be going out for or how my agent should be submitting me. We can tell you that in 4 days. And if you think that you're on track for stardom, we would highly recommend figuring that out. And you need to figure it out now if you're giving yourself a short timeline, which we don't recommend. And honestly, if you're concerned with purely being a star and being famous and rich, this is the wrong YouTube channel for you. Because the advice that we're doling out on a weekly basis is much more for the journeywoman, journeyman actor who are trying to be in it to win it. That was really bad. But for decades. Yeah. And being that person who you might recognize on the street and be like, I recognize you from somewhere, but not necessarily famous or would know your name.
And not to say that couldn't come from being a journeyman actor. The other thing too, just real quick, is it's something that our mentor, Sam Christensen himself, would say, that we are entrepreneurs. And if you are an entrepreneur, you are trying to give the audience, the market, something that has never been given to them before. So if you don't even know what you can give to the market to market yourself, then that's a big question mark that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
And the Sam Christensen process is a great way to do that.
Yeah, because imagine if you think of yourself as a product and you go to a grocery store like Whole Foods and say, hey, I want you to sell my product. And they go, great, what's your product? And you go, I don't know.
It's all things.
What do you need?
It can be whatever you need.
Yeah, what do you need? I could be anything you want. They're like, well, we have everything. So you need to tell me what it is that you are and why it is that you're unique and why I should be putting you in my store. So maybe the store is like your agent. I don't know. Not sure where this is going. But the point being that if you don't know with such specificity what makes you you and how you are different from every other white male in their 40s with a mustache and an old-timey Newsies hat, like if I don't know why I am unique for such a generic category, then any prospective agent or manager, they're just not going to know what to do with you, especially in a broad category like white male 40s. I'll never get picked up by a manager or an agent if I can't talk to them with that specificity. So it's the key to all actors' careers, but certainly if you want to be a star, you got to figure that out today.
Yep.
Hi, Brooke and Matt.
Oh.
Hey, Brian.
Longtime listener, first-time questioner. As believers, how do you navigate this industry? Not the automotive industry, but the quote-unquote industry.
I'm glad he pointed out that it wasn't the automotive. I was totally going to go on an automotive industry rant. That's a good question. In fact, we've both sort of faced auditions recently that have not only just tested our ideas of ourselves as actors, but specifically as being Christians. It made us sit with those roles, those potential roles, before even thinking about auditioning and wondering, do I want if I book this, do I even want to be on this set doing this role? Or will it just cause me stress to be thinking about this role and thinking about the things I have to do or say? It's a personal journey for every actor, period, but certainly actors who are Christians who might feel like their boundaries are closer in. I know I can't remember the one famous actor who plays a lot of villains, and he has it in every contract that he will not kiss another actor, period, because he's married, he's a Christian, and he just does not, he believes that would be a violation of his covenant with his wife. And so even if his character does get romantic with another, character in the story, they will never show anything on screen more than, I guess, hugging. And I totally respect that. And so every actor, like I said, period, but also specifically Christian actors or actors of faith, I should say, it doesn't have to be limited to Christians, needs to figure out what those boundaries are. And
ahead of time.
Yeah. And again, not let the FOMO of, but what if this is my big role? And to not let that cause you to start to expand your boundaries and then you regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's also a piece inside that comes with an audition, whether I'm like, okay, this has some grittiness to it. And yet there's something that's saying, it's cool. Just go for it. Not like it's cool, like, yeah, but more of like, you'll be fine. And a lot of times that you'll be fine feeling that I have before going into an audition that might be questionable for a majority of Christian believing actors, it usually pays out with, it gets me on a radar of a casting director to where I might not be right for that role, but they do remember me for whatever it was that I did. And that's been kind of protection, I guess, but also I have figured out that if you set your boundaries beforehand, then you're easily able to just say no and have peace about that. One of the things that I think any actor should develop is that inner voice, that gut feeling of like, is this going to hinder me personally, like Matt was saying, of causing me stress, or is it something that I feel utter peace about? And if you make the decision, whether it's yes or no, and you have an utter peace about it, that's your answer.
Yeah.
So I usually just kind of go with that. And I also don't fall into the trap of feeling like I have to audition for every single role that comes my way.
That's such a good point. And I think you kind of touched on it. There's that hybrid scenario where let's say that language is your sort of Achilles heel, or that's your boundary. And let's say you get this audition that has an F-bomb in it, and you could just not say the F word. You could turn down the audition altogether, or you could audition, take out the F word, and then in your submission notes or being very clear with your agent, these are my boundaries. This is why I chose not to say this word. And then you can leave it up to them that if the language for that particular character is important, and it's important for them to have an actor who is willing to say anything and everything, well, then great, they can move past you. But like Brooke said, now you're on their radar for any other project that casting office might be casting, or characters that might come up in the story who don't curse. And so you're being completely honest and straightforward. You're not wasting their time by auditioning for it and dropping that one F-bomb out of the script. You should be careful if it's laden with language, right? Yeah. Every other word is an F-bomb, and you drop all of those, and then you don't tell them why. That now you're just wasting everyone's time, and that's not.
Just imagine if those are your only words that you're just like.
Yeah. If it's a one-line character, and that character says the F word 3 times in that one line, then maybe just don't audition, because they want.
And it's okay to turn things down, people. It is okay.
Yeah. So my question is, how often should I get my headshots updated? Obviously, if I change my look, but if I'm keeping my look the same, how often do you think I should update them?
It's a good question.
I can't answer this one.
Yeah, because we'd be hypocrites.
We would be hypocrites.
The pandemic, it messed a lot of people up. And it also gave a grace for actors. A lot of casting offices were like, we get it. You gain weight, you lost weight.
Gain weight. And,
it wasn't safe for a long time to go and have a photo session. But now that we're a couple of years removed from the worst of that, and this, like Brooke just admitted, like, we need to point this finger at ourselves. Like, if I'm going to wear this mustache for longer than 2 weeks, I need new headshots with this. but that's not what they said, because they said,
If you don't change your
if
look.
you're not changing your look. I think, it's the older you get, the less you change year to year.
Mhm.
But it does become like when your favorite product revamps the label for no apparent reason, and it just kind of catches your attention again. You're like, oh yeah, this is my favorite brand. Oh, they changed things up a little bit. Now sometimes you're like, wait, why do they have a whole new color scheme and the font is weird and it's a different logo? They've completely changed their identity. Why? It was perfect the way it was. So you got to be careful about just shaking it up and going and get glamour shots, and doing weird hairdos, or thinking you need to get character shots, for this show and that show. You got to be careful about the why. Again, if it's based in FOMO, you can see a thread here.
Yeah.
If you think you're missing out on something by not having a specific type of headshot, that's not the right reason to go out and spend $300, $500, $700. If you're inspired, if you're curious, if you have the disposable income and you just want something fresh, you can do it every year if you want.
Yeah. I'd say like 2, 3, 4 tops.
Yeah, that's a good numbers answer.
Tops. Because here's the kicker. There's also a generation of human beings that like to keep something for a really long time. And then it's like going on a dating app and that person looks nothing like what they are. So I think if you are self-aware and you understand, like, yes, my hair is a little bit different, or yeah, I have a little bit more of a double chin than I did in the picture. I need to get headshots, but it doesn't need to be like that day.
Yeah.
But you need to be self-aware of how you come across, because if you're 70 years old and you're still using a headshot from your when you were 50, that's a problem.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're strapped for cash, you getting new shots is sort of out of the question, but you're worried that your current headshot is stale, go back to your last session and look at some of the ones you didn't choose.
Yeah.
Maybe something in a different outfit or different backdrop, and just see if you can find, even if it's the exact same smile or the same face, just with a different shirt and different backdrop, because unfortunately actors do that all the time. They love these 7 shots and there's literally nothing different about them other than the wardrobe and the backdrop. And they think it's 7 different headshots. It's like, no, if we took out the backdrop and your clothing, it would be a carbon copy of the same face. So you probably have other headshots that you would love this just as much, that have something fresh, a different shirt, a different backdrop, that you could use just to freshen things up. If you think that you're suffering from a stale headshot that's just been up there too long, and that way you can save the money.
Can you have a successful career without having a social media presence?
One word, yes. Moving on.
I'm not on social media.
Do you feel like it's necessary for Southeast actors to get a manager? And if so, when is the right time to do so?
Brooke and I don't have managers. There's that little nugget. Oh, that's a reminder.
Maybe that's a reminder that we should.
Oh, is that a manager calling me? So that's right there. It's a personal decision, and in the Southeast specifically, because Brooke and I are located in the Southeast, it is such a different conversation than if you're an LA or New York based actor. So if you are from those 2 major markets, our advice is going to be very different, or not, won't seem appropriate. But for a Southeast actor, it's
an interesting thing, because a manager should be managing your career. And until you have what we talked about in one of the very first questions of having overlapping conflicts, and you're getting to the point where you need just someone else's ear to say, is this the trajectory? This is where I want to go. Is this a beneficial role to go after? A lot of people ask the question of, should I stop auditioning for one-liners or characters with no name? It really is a personal preference, but a manager will start to mold and take you in a direction, and you just have to be ready to hear what they have to say. Yeah. I was working on a show where the gentleman who was in the scene with me, he had no lines. But he really felt like it was a great show for him. His manager said, don't do it, but he did it anyway. So you also have that freedom. And I'm thinking he should have listened to his manager.
Yeah. So that's a very complicated question. Too much for an Ask Us Anything, where we're feeling like we're already going pretty long here. probably worthy of an entire video or an Ask Me Anything where we just cover that type of question. So yeah, we'll kind of put we'll put a pin in it. That's the thing.
That's where that term came from,
yeah.
Matt.
I do want to get to this other first time caller.
Okay.
Hey, Matt. First time, long time. A question for you, as it relates to First Blood. Do you watch the movie from the perspective of Vietnam veteran John Rambo, or do you watch the movie from the perspective of law enforcement? I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
John Rambo.
I'll hang up and listen. It was, as silly as the question seems, that one of the reasons why I left that one in there is it is fascinating to think about perspective. Like, where do you find yourself in the story? And oftentimes we want to associate ourselves with the hero of the story. So we could unpack this if we wanted to really kind of legitimize the question and say things like, you shouldn't judge the character when you're auditioning, when you're watching a movie. I think it's a fascinating question to ask that type of perspective. Like, where do you find yourself in the movie? Do you find yourself relating to John Rambo or to Brian Dennehy, who played the sheriff, or are you David Caruso, who is one of the Weekend Warriors that comes out, or he's one of the deputies. So while that's a fun question, I think it does raise that point of, like, you got to be careful about judging characters when you're auditioning. When you're just sitting back with some popcorn in your hand, I think it's fun to think about, who do you root for? Who do you root against? So thank you for that first time, long time.
Yep.
Okay. So one final question, at least we'll hear part of it.
As you both began your acting careers, who were the people that you were around that gave you the most inspiration? Teachers, other actors?
I'm just going to stop you right there, caller. For me, I would say it was Brian Chapman.
Ooh, bit.
My improv teacher, who I started taking from in 2004, who taught me to not fear that art form, but came to embrace it. And I'm so pleased to say that that relationship blossomed from teacher-student into co-writers.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that he didn't want me to say that because he's the caller. But there you go. Those are the consequences, Brian, of asking questions in a public forum.
Michael Pinkney.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like it.
He was a teacher in college.
Oh, yeah. Where'd you go to college?
I went to the University of Florida.
Go Gators. We just lost some of our viewers just now who aren't Gator fans. But if you enjoyed this, it's longer than normal video, but I think sometimes AMAs are that way. And if you liked it, comment below. If it's something you'd want to see us do again, then we can open it up and get more questions from more of you. And if you didn't like it, well, you're probably not watching. So there you go. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.
We will.